I was so much more motivated when I was on testosterone. Testosterone is like a freaking happy drug.
My name is Elle. I am a female to male to female detransitioner.
I recently detransitioned, probably like a month and a half ago, and I've been actively living detransitioned into a woman for like 2 days now.
My name is Jack, and I am a female to male to female detransitioner.
Testosterone is like a freaking happy drug. At least it was for me. I mean, being on testosterone, I was so much more energetic. I was more motivated.
I've been on testosterone for like 4 days, so that's exciting. I started Saturday morning, putting gel on in the morning, and I just wanted to share like a little bit about how things feel so far. They feel good.
I'm not really sure what it is, but I do know you are heightened, sense-wise, after about the third week.
Just for example, when I worked at Walgreens, there was a couple of months, especially over the winter, where I had exclusively worked night shifts. And so I would get to work at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I would work until maybe about 11 p.m. at night, and then I would go afterwards straight to the gym, which was right next door to the Walgreens that I worked at, and I would work out for about 2.5, 3 hours, so I'd get home at anywhere between 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just kind of did that repeatedly. And it was in the winter time where my car broke down, so after, I would walk to work, or I'd jog, or whatever I was in the mood for, and then after work, I'd go to the gym, and then I'd jog all the way back home in the snow. Things like that now that I've been off of testosterone, I kind of recognize felt so much easier for me when I was on testosterone.
This is where back then I would tend to get the Superman complex, is what I call it. Superman complex is, as you feel so powerful, that you're improving so much, you feel almost like nothing in the world can stop you.
I've been thinking about changing hormones, going on testosterone for like 2 years, a long time, and I finally started doing it. It's almost 7 years since I've had testosterone in my body. I just feel kind of like confident and good about myself. Like I feel kind of like cute and attractive and stuff.
So the mentality starts to change. Is it a psychosis? No. Okay, I didn't feel a psychosis. Did I feel heightened and aware more? Yes. Was I more apt to jump at a fight? Absolutely.
Compared to being a woman, like if I had to compare them, I would say that testosterone kind of made everything dull in a good way compared to being like a woman. Because now when I am feeling like either happy or excited or angry or whatever range of emotion, you feel normally as a woman, as a guy, it's there, but it's just not nearly these massive peaks and valleys, it's just not as intense, and I thought that was so nice. Things weren't as big of a deal, or they didn't feel like as big of a deal when I was on testosterone.
It's hard to describe in words. I can't put it, but there's a high there, man, and it's a confidence. It's a natural. I'm okay. I got this. I don't know how to describe it. It's hard to put in words.
It's just kind of surprising because I didn't really think that there would ever be a point in my life where I'd miss anything at all about being transgender.
If you're, a go-getter, you're going to be that much more of a go-getter. But when you don't need it, like I did not need it, these are the harms. These are the effects.
I got what's called gynecomastia, bro. You'll see, you can't see it here, but my nipples have a tissue that developed behind them because my estrogen levels went way too high. This is a side effect. This is known side effect. The only way to fix it is surgery at this point. It's too far gone. I've had it for about 7 years now. And pretty much I have what are called boobs on a man.
How I spoke to people was different when I was a guy too. I mean, when I was talking to other guys, it's kind of just, you say what you mean and you mean what you say, but, speaking with other women is very, very, very different. But there's a certain confidence that I had when I was on testosterone that has kind of dimmed down a little bit.
Medical professionals attributed my dysphoria to an innate identity. The internet encouraged this. My parents didn't know how to respond, assuming that therapists and doctors would know better than to let a 16-year-old make the wrong, life-altering decisions.
I regret my double mastectomy more than I regret going on testosterone. Like, if I had gone on testosterone and never had a double mastectomy, I feel like I could almost reverse all of the effects because, you know, my voice will always be deeper and I'll always have the body hair, but at least I would have still had my whole body. But parts of my body were cut off. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I feel mutilated. And I don't mean that to be dramatic. That's just genuinely how I feel. Like when I see myself naked, it's like when I look at myself from the rib cage down, like the belly button down, I feel like I look like a woman, at least mostly. But when I look at the rest of my body, you know, without my wig on and without my makeup, and when I see my chest, I do feel like I look mutilated, or like I feel like some kind of bad science experiment.
But yeah, it's just things like that where I'll be just around, or I'll be thinking, oh, I need to do something, I need to make a video, oh, I need to go to the store, or maybe I should start working out, and things that if I had decided to do them a year ago when I was on testosterone, it would have been done by the end of the day, right? And this is probably just a me problem, but I find myself so freaking lazy now. Yeah, trying to get myself to do things, and also kind of you just start to miss some of the effects of testosterone.
I was also feeling like a little quicker to anger a little bit.
This is where the mind games started. And I had a friend of mine who, before I started, said, when you're off, you're going to feel like shit. But just keep telling yourself, it's only 12 weeks. It's only 12 weeks and then I'll be back on. So essentially, you were going through these highs and lows. Highs when you were on, lows when you were off. So it felt like the best feeling in the world. Stronger, more muscular, a little more swag, senses were heightened. Everything was awesome until you start to come off. And everything reverses and goes the opposite direction.
For me, at least, it was a happy drug. I kind of also find myself missing the way that it made me feel sometimes.
You had to mentally be prepared for what was going to happen if you came off.
You know, just some of the ways that it made me feel sometimes, I do kind of find myself missing.
When you go into Planned Parenthood, at least for me, I went in and I signed like a little consent form. They didn't really ask me any questions, and they took a blood draw, and then I scheduled to come back for 2 weeks later after the lab results had come in and get my prescription. That was it.
You know, people ask me like, do you regret it? Yes, I regret it. I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life.
I got very active in the trans communities on Reddit, on Twitter, and spent most of my time online. Didn't do anything in real life at all. Really, I didn't have any friends. I didn't go to school at that point. So the only people I really talked to on a daily basis were the people that I talked to online, and that definitely didn't help. That didn't. I was basically consumed by trans media. About a year later, I started testosterone, and I was 16. I had been going to a therapist who tried to tell me that she didn't want me to transition. Then I went to a therapist from the LGBT center who told me that she was ready to get me on hormones from day one.
I was able to have a double mastectomy because I had one appointment with a therapist who diagnosed me with gender dysphoria. I saw him one time. I believe I was 16 years old. I could have been 15, but I'm pretty sure I was 16. I don't know. We must have talked for only like 45 minutes or something like that. And he diagnosed me with severe depression. I still have like the diagnosis paper. Severe depression, severe anxiety, and gender dysphoria. And That was a piece of paper that allowed me to go on testosterone, and that was the piece of paper that allowed me to have a double mastectomy at 19 years old, 18 years old.
So, my opinion first on all of that. I mean, it must be nice to just be able to walk in and finally, just say, hey, I want to start hormones now, and then just kind of kick that off. Although, I will say that, I mean, with the whole just giving hormones to whoever walks in the door, I mean, I don't think is necessarily a good thing.
Imagine how many girls have felt uncomfortable in their female bodies before growing into them and becoming strong, confident women who are happy with themselves. This is how it used to be before dysphoria was medicalized, before women were told they could become men.
I mean, like, when you go to the doctor and you want to get, like, a medication for something, they don't just give it to you. Like, they want to make sure that you're taking the right thing to help your specific needs. So with Planned Parenthood just kind of willy-nilly, just almost handing out hormones like candy to anybody who walks in the door, regardless if you're actually transgender or not, or just confused or whatnot. I mean, I feel it's almost disrespectful to people who are actually transgender. I mean, like, it's like they're trained medical professionals. I mean, shouldn't they be asking you more questions and, like, taking more care to give you what you actually need? I mean, that can't be good for the transgender community in general anyways. I mean, when you're just handing out hormones to anybody who wants them, I mean, you're bound to be giving it to somebody who shouldn't be taking hormones, like myself or somebody else who'd detransitioned. I mean, the more people you just hand it out to, I mean, that's just gonna mean more detransitioners down the line.
Somebody quoted my tweet and said, to any women out there, how did you feel about your body when you were 14? Were you comfortable in it? Why are we encouraging teen girls to believe their bodies are wrong? Somebody says, very uncomfortable in my own skin, hated my periods, wanted to be a boy because they didn't have to go through that every month. Very happy to be a woman now. Hating your period is such a universal female experience that is not talked about. Women have been feeling like this since the beginning of time. I feel like teenage girls, especially like in this generation, are being told that they can opt out of this, of all of this. Womanhood, of expectations of society, looking a certain way. You can just opt out by changing the way that you identify. There are so many young teen girls right now who are identifying as men because of this. So many young women who don't want attention from men, who don't want to deal with growing into an adult woman because of everything that you're told that means. You can just say, no, I'm not a woman, I'm a guy.
I had this surgery. Well, actually, let me back up. I had a consultation, and my mom drove me to have the consultation, and I probably saw the surgeon for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Basically, what happened was he walked in, my shirt was off, it was extremely uncomfortable. He touched my breast, he looked at my breast, we took photos, like one facing to the side, one facing to the front. And then he was like, okay, we're good. And I didn't see him again. I just saw the nurses and anesthesiologists, and they rolled me back and put me under. And when I woke up, my breast was gone. And I remember waking up and being in extreme pain.
Every so often, I have to answer a question that nobody in my audience has asked me, but somebody in my audience should have. I should have received a question at some point along the lines of, look, Eisel, I've heard your philosophy about sobriety. I've heard what you have to say about the politics of the transgender movement on one hand, and gay rights, gay marriage, gay equality, status of homosexual society on the other. How do you actually reconcile these things? How do you actually live with them? How do you actually talk to people face to face? Because, I do meet and talk to transgender people, and they're often very nice and talkative people. I have very pleasant conversations with transgender people, and I sometimes wonder how unpleasant those conversations might be if those people had seen my YouTube channel and knew my my political positions on these things. Now, there's an imperfect parallel here. You know, if you're an atheist, how do you talk to Muslims? If you're an atheist, how do you talk to religious people within your own family, whatever your family may be Muslim, maybe Christian? How do you deal with complete strangers? How do you deal with preachers on the street who are trying to convert you and others? How do you deal with dangerous cults that may have how do you deal with these contrasts, contradictions, paradoxes that surround you? But especially in the context of someone who may be your friend, or maybe your brother or sister, maybe someone you care about, for other reasons. So nobody has asked me this. We've spent quite a lot of time in stand-up comedy clubs within the last year, shall we say. There are transgender stand-up comedians. There are transgender people in the audience, and they joke around with me. There are, of course, there's every possible permutation of gay and non-binary and what have you, but you are around people from all those walks of life. And one of my brothers is gay, is openly homosexual. I do not have any people who are either transgender or cross-dressing in my family that I know of, but it's not implausible that this is the sort of thing that I could have a best friend from high school, or a brother or a cousin, where this is what you talk about. Now, what's actually most interesting to me about this is the role of the unknown. Politics gets really boring when all of the variables and all the factors and all the outcomes are known. So, a lot of vegans don't believe in fluoride. They don't believe in using toothpaste that has fluoride. Let me tell you something, guys. All the scientific facts surrounding dental care are known. There are no mysteries. There are really, I have met and spoken to many vegans who refuse to believe in soap for their hands. They refuse to believe in the microbial theory of disease. They don't believe in bacteria. I wish I were joking. These people really exist. Well, the politics of soap, the politics of dentistry, this is really totally in the realm of the known, right? Religion, it's 50-50. From the perspective of a nihilistic atheist with religion, we're dealing with something totally known. Okay, I know the reality of the Christian Bible. I know the reality of the Christian God. I know everything. There's no divine mystery for me. There aren't even historical or literary mysteries for me. There's no scientific question unresolved concerning the Christian faith or the Muslim faith or the Buddhist faith. There are no unanswered questions for me. But from the other perspective, from the perspective of people who are true believers within the religion, there are all these terrible unknowns, these terrifying unknowns, including what is going to happen to them after they die. What were they before they were born? I mean, you list off. Are they being visited by the ghost of their deceased grandfather? They live with all kinds of unknowns, and they have the long dark night of the soul. They have gnawing doubts that they try to counterpose to their faith. That may include doubts about the history, about the literature. For example, about slavery. You can talk to Muslims who are really, their heart is tearing itself apart. They're really emotionally messed up about the reality of slavery in their religion, historically and today. I hate to tell you this. Slavery is a very important issue in the history of Buddhism, right? But for me, the history of slavery in Buddhism, it's a down-to-earth, cut-and-dried, simple matter, just like fluoride and dental care and soap. This is the world of known factual things. But it's 50-50, because when I'm talking to people who are inside the religion, that's very different. And likewise, I've made many videos talking about this. Meditation. For me, there is no mystery. Prayer. For me, there's no mystery. Reincarnation. Ghosts. For me, this is the realm of things that are known, things I'm completely certain about. But for people inside the religion, it's unknown. So when you are bridging that gap, when I am sitting and talking to someone who's a Buddhist, I'm very artful about this. I'm aware that they're a person living with mysteries. Okay? And how I talk to them, and what am I trying to do in that conversation? Am I trying to bring them into the world of real things, the world of unbelief? Or, what is the purpose of the conversation? Interesting question. And now, again, without digressing, nationalism is very similar, actually. People who believe in the glory and destiny of the Chinese race and the Chinese... I've dealt with some Chinese nationalists lately. For example, nationalism, communism. Yes. Okay. let's say I have a good friend named Jeff. And let's say Jeff is gay. And let's say Jeff has been aware that he's gay from the age of 14. Around 14, 15, he was figuring out, for different people, figure out at different stages. So, like, really, between 15 and 18, like, well, by the time he hit 18, he completely knows who he is. He knows he's living his life. He's solid. He's not in denial about his homosexuality. He's not conflicted about it. But let's say Jeff is now 25 and he comes to me and says that he is interested in making the transition from being a gay man to being a transgender woman, being a trans woman. Okay. Now, footnote, not everyone who transitions is gay. There are heterosexual men who transition. There are, again, when we switch to genders, we talk about women. Not all women who want to make the transition are lesbians. But that is a footnote because I'm just dealing with this one example of this friend of mine called Jeff. The most important thing I can do is actually not to deal with the realm of scientific certainties, but to deal with the uncertainties, with the realm of the unknown. So I think you can imagine, it'd be very easy for you, and some of you in the audience, you may have had this conversation with Jeff, with your brother, with someone you know and care about in your life. You may have tried to get out stacks of medical reports and say, oh, well, look at this scientific evidence. The reality is here's the percentage of people after they've had the surgery who end up committing suicide. Here's the percentage of people after surgery who have this side effect and this side effect. Of the people who take this drug, here's how many are unhappy about it. This is the realm of scientific certainties. And certainly my view of the world is not completely uninformed by scientific certainties. But here's a true exercise in nihilism. Here's the philosophy of nihilism being demonstrated. Well, Jeff, this is about happiness. Okay? You're not talking about taking these drugs for any reason other than your own happiness. I didn't go to Cambodia for my happiness. I didn't do humanitarian work in Laos for my own happiness. I didn't study the Chinese language for my own happiness or the Cree Ojibwe language. I didn't get involved with the vegan movement and have it ruin my life for my happiness. There were a lot of things in my life that are not about my happiness. But what we are talking about now, Jeff, is just you wanting to be happy. I'm going to tell you two things, Jeff. Some gay men, some men in your situation, think they will be happier if they take testosterone blocking drugs. Drugs that will allow them to accentuate the feminine features of their face, their body, their voice, right? Testosterone blockers. But you know what, Jeff? There are some gay men who think they will be happier if they take testosterone boosting drugs. There are gay men who are bodybuilders. There are gay men who are porn stars. There are gay men who take testosterone boosters. Guess what? Doesn't make you heterosexual. It doesn't. Okay. Some of you might have this twisted. Nope. If a gay man takes testosterone boosting drugs, and in case you didn't know, almost all of the performance enhancing steroids for men, either they directly boost testosterone or they indirectly do. When you look at the cycle of the many chemical effects, one of the chemical effects will be boosting testosterone levels or preventing testosterone from being cleared out of the drug and thus sustaining higher testosterone levels for a long time. This kind of thing, Hey, you know why those gay men do that, Jeff? They do it in order to be happy. And Jeff, I know you've been through this series of consultations with doctors, psychologists, possibly surgeons, possibly, therapists, psychiatrists, whatever the particular university will be. I'm willing to bet not a single one of those doctors has asked you if you think you would be happier with higher testosterone, more muscle mass, larger and longer lasting erections, and a higher sex drive, being a gay man, going out and having gay sex, going to the gym, all these things, instead of less muscle mass, not just lower sex drive, but the total inability to have an erection, total inability to have an orgasm, the debilitating effects of the testosterone blocking drugs, and then all the knock-on impacts that's going to have in your life psychologically. Now, this is ultimately what I have to say to Jeff. Jeff, if you think you will be happier having low testosterone instead of the normal level of testosterone you have now or superhuman levels of testosterone, the truth is you don't know. That's unknown. You've made up a story in your own head to convince yourself that you will be happy if you take these drugs, and then possibly that after you take the drugs, you have this surgery, so on and so forth. You have told yourself that, but you don't know. Here's the really fucked up part, Jeff. You could try. Now, we can just go to the gym. I mean, it depends where you live, but probably any gym in any downtown major city. You may have to go to a special gay gym, but I doubt it. You can probably just hang around and meet some gay bodybuilders. Obviously you can look up their YouTube channels. And you could ask these guys, does it really make you happy? Does it really make you happy being muscular and dynamic and strong and getting your dick sucked by all these? Is this really happiness for you? And you know what? Some of these guys are going to tell you yes. And you ask them, don't you think you'd be happier on testosterone blockers and withering away and having all of the debilitating effects of these, the transgender hormone things? And, again, the long-term effects are even scarier than the short-term effects. Don't you think you'd rather be weak? Don't you think you'd rather be disabled rather than enabled by the drugs taking? You can even talk to them. How do you think, what do you think the knock-on effects would be for how much reading you get done, how much work you get done, how many hours you sleep a day? I mean, there are all kinds of things, right, with these drugs. You know what? You could, without even trying the drugs yourself, you could talk to some gay bodybuilders, gay porn stars, gay hustlers, guys who are on testosterone boosting drugs, and they will tell you how wonderful their whole life is and how happy they are because they took that route. Okay? Now, let me just ask you, why didn't a single one of your psychologists or psychiatrists suggest this, even if it's just as a trial? Like, even if it's just one crazy self-destructive summer you have. Okay? Like, why was this not entertained as an empirical experiment? Taking those testosterone boosting drugs, hints, foreshadowing, they're bad for you. It's not good for you. But you know what's worse? Testosterone blockers. You know what's worse? Castration. Having a part of your body, a sexual organ, cut off permanently. The disabling effects of both the drugs and the surgery for making the transition that way. It's unbelievably worse than, this bodybuilding route. And again, by the way, foreshadow, I don't endorse this kind of bodybuilding. I don't endorse taking testosterone boosters, what have you. I really don't. But I mean, you can see interviews with people who steroids and to be on testosterone booster specifically. I remember an interview, many of you will have seen the same movie. It was a documentary movie I saw. And they interviewed a gay man who was dying of HIV/AIDS. And, he showed pictures of himself, and it was like his blood cell count had dropped and dropped and dropped. He withered away and withered away. And then the doctor said, okay, look, we're going to put you on steroids and testosterone booster. And he looked like the cover of Men's Health magazine. was this total transformation. He went from being this skeletal, pale, weak, sickly figure to being gorgeous. And it doesn't last forever. Again, I don't know if he has 5, 10, 15 years like that. Yeah, that's another question, the long-term effects. But this guy, he was really dying. And by the way, you can meet people where it's some other illness. It's cancer or what have you. It's not necessarily age. They have some debilitating illness and they're given these drugs. I had a friend, he had a spinal injury and they put him on steroids that did also boost it. He said, whoa, this is unbelievable. I should have a spinal injury all the time. He felt superhuman, and he said, interestingly, he said to me that he knew. So I think he only did it for one night. And he said, no, I can never do this again. Because he said, I know the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. But he really felt the power of these drugs. And the spinal injury let him walk. Now, I think he would have eventually walked anyway. But I think his recovery took a week instead of 3 months or something because he was put on. These are muscle building steroids. It was building muscle in his back where he had this back injury. That's why he was put on. But he talked to me about just what an amazing experience it was to be on these boosters. Okay, you can look at examples of people where their whole life has been transformed for the better, and they endorse these drugs, what have you. And again, whether you are gay or straight is a completely independent variable. Okay, whether you specifically are a gay man who enjoys cross-dressing, whether you specifically are a gay man who enjoys playing the effeminate role rather than the more masculine role, none of that is related to your testosterone levels, your hormone levels, your endocrinology in any way. There's no relationship, right? My point is you can take testosterone booster and still be an effeminate bottom, to be blunt. You don't have to be a dominant top to be into it. You don't, okay? And you may have gotten it into your head that these physically and mentally disabling drugs, testosterone blockers and the kind of simulated estrogen, you may think that's going to enable your life, but there is a very literal biological sense in which it is disabling your life. Now, I said at the beginning I had two things to say, and that was thing one. Okay, guess what thing two is? Here's the problem with the testosterone booster. If this is just about your happiness, right, then these drugs you take, whether it's a testosterone blocker or a testosterone booster, they are on the same level as cocaine. And you know what? You can probably go to that same gym and talk to the same guys. You can talk to some gay bodybuilders and some gay hustlers and ask them if they think cocaine has made their lives better or worse. Don't get me wrong. Some people will tell you cocaine's ruined their life. It is not hard to find people who will say to you that in all honesty and on balance, cocaine has been a net positive in their life, that it brought a lot of joy into their life. And, they made all these friends and whatever it is. Sorry, I've told this anecdote before, but there was one medical doctor who walked up to Peter Bregan at the end of one of his lectures out of the audience. And this medical doctor said to him angrily, "How dare you say all these terrible things about cocaine? If it wasn't for cocaine, I never would have finished medical school." He was defending cocaine. He would have never studied for his exams. It helped him focus. And it was kind of a friend of a friend of a friend. I got an account from a musician, and he had one hit album, and he never would have finished that album without cocaine. And he said he and the whole band, they were all using cocaine sparingly. So, get into the history of this. Okay, but here's the thing. So let's just say it's at the same gym. We have a gym full of gay bodybuilders and gay hustlers and gay porn stars all hang out at the same gym. That's my gym. That's the gym I go to. I like being the only straight guy in the room. It's not my current gym. This does not be this year show. Any major city. This is a gym that's not hard to find. Okay, here's the problem. This is just about happiness. We're not dealing with the objective scientific facts. We're not dealing with the question of your ethical or political responsibility to make the world a better place, neither in relation to Cambodia, nor Saudi Arabia, nor Israel, nor Canada, nor anything else, right? No question of making the world a better place. No question even of you being a better person. No question even of morally or ethically, 5 years from now, who do you want to be? 20 years from now, who do you want to be? Do you want to become a cocaine-addicted scumbag? You want to become, someone who's dependent on either testosterone blockers or testosterone boosters? Who do you want to? All kinds of questions here. We are not entertaining because we're just framing this in terms of happiness. I can go to that gym and talk to a bodybuilder and gay hustler, and he says, yeah, you know what? Cocaine's been a very positive thing. In his life, he owes a lot of his happiness and joy in life to cocaine. It's been more positive than negative. And I can turn over here. I can turn from the leg machine to the military press machine or something. And there's another bodybuilder and gay hustler who says, don't do it, bro. Don't do it. And he says, honestly, cocaine has brought tragedy and death and heartbreak into his life. And he's seen the harm it did to himself and others. You can meet someone who says their own father was a cocaine addict and it ruined their family. They can say their brother was a cocaine addict and he's dead. Or you can meet people who reflect on their own life and they say they were cocaine addicts for 10 years. Or not even an addict, just an occasional user. And they realize now in retrospect how negative it was. And here's the thing. If you meet those two guys at the same gym and you look at their lives and you look at the outcomes, you don't know which one you are going to be. It's unknown. The outcomes are unknown. Okay? And when you are dealing with human happiness, not something objectively real, okay? The brain damage caused by cocaine is an objectively real fact. It shows up on an MRI scan. When you're dead, we can remove your brain from the cadaver and we can study it and we can see the damage you did to your brain with your cocaine habit. That is objectively real. Happiness is your subjective attitude towards things. Two identical twins could live exactly the same life and do the same amount of cocaine and the same amount of testosterone boosting steroid drugs and have two totally different attitudes. One of them sees their life as a comedy and the other one sees their life as a tragedy. And at least hypothetically, it's exactly the same life. Okay? When we're talking about happiness, you don't know. You're signing up for a course of treatment, a course of medication, where the damage that is going to be done to you is known, is scientifically real. And your happiness, the presumed benefit you're going to get out of it, apart from being selfish and self-indulgent and short-term thinking, it's something that is fundamentally unknown and unreal. So when I have a gay friend who's interested in transitioning, when I have a gay friend who's interested in getting on these drugs or doing this surgery, this is the fundamental message I have to deliver to them. You are not sick. There is no drug in the world that can treat you or make you better or make you happy because you do not have an illness. There is nothing wrong with you. And you are not broken. There is no surgery that can fix you. People do all kinds of terrible things to themselves and others in pursuit of this happiness you're talking about, running away from this dysphoria, this misery you're talking about. I want you to find the maturity and self-discipline to do what's right for yourself, to do what's right for the better person you could be 5 years from now. And why don't you give some fucking thought to the rest of humanity?
The feelings of dysphoria were never there until I started having sex with a woman. And I think that should have been a big red flag for me, but I just didn't know. I wasn't aware of what the criteria that should be met for someone to be considered transgender. And so when I came out to my mom, she was like, well, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, even though I don't think I was sure. I remember laying in bed being like, well, am I sure? I wasn't. But I was so stubborn, such a stubborn person, that once I had decided on something, like once I decided like I am trans, I was like, well, there's no going back, and this is what we're doing now. But the thing was, is like I couldn't reach for a plate in the cabinet to feed myself without the pain, or like it was really hard for me to take a shower by myself. Like I really needed someone to help me. And for a little while, like they were willing to help me, but then after some time, you know, maybe like the first week, it kind of seemed like they were really irritated. So I had a really, really difficult time, and I was out of work for 6 weeks, and I could only sleep on my back. And I remember not feeling anything. I did not feel happy about having a double mastectomy. Like, I don't want to say I felt sad about it, but it was more like I didn't feel anything. Eventually I went back to work, but I was still experiencing like a lot of pain, and I basically went immediately back to doing all this physical work because my job was basically like to throw stuff around, and it would hurt me so much. Like I would pick up these 50-pound boxes and like throw these bags of potatoes and stuff, and I would just be in so much pain. Like there was a few times where there was like a center island in the middle of the grocery store where I'd be with some of my coworkers, we'd be like trimming vegetables or something, and I would just be like keeled over on the floor in pain. Like, I'm not a crier, but I was like on the verge of tears because I was like hurting so much, and my coworker was like, are you okay? Like, what can I do? Like, they like didn't know what to do, and I was like, I'm really sorry, like I just had reconstructive surgery, like I just need a minute. And I would just be literally huddled in a ball on a concrete floor at my job.
And I mean, I think that as a doctor, for some, like, people who are, like, trained medical professionals, I mean, should be asking more questions instead of just having you walk in, be like, hey, I'm transgender, I want to take these, and then them just like, here, take your prescription and get out. I mean, it's like, we got our money.
And it makes me angry for myself, and it also makes me angry for other people, because the people who have reached out to me, especially privately, and told me about their regrets regarding surgery, whether that be a mastectomy or any type of top surgery or hysterectomy or basically like any sex reassignment surgery or cross-sex hormones, like it made me a lot more upset than I thought it would, and not in like a sadness type of way, but like a very angering type of way. Like it made me really mad that this has happened to other people, and doctors were just like, yeah, I'll take your money and I'll take out your organs.
But I mean, of course, hindsight, because I mean, back when I wanted to take hormones, I mean, I thought Planned Parenthood, oh my God, this is like a godsend. I mean, I don't have to go, because I didn't want to talk to a therapist. I mean, so I don't have to jump through any hoops, I don't have to do anything. I just walked in and got it. And yes, that's on me for not knowing what I wanted to do. But I also feel like if it wasn't just as easy as just walking in and signing a form for something that permanently changes your body for essentially the rest of your life in some aspects, I think, like, if it wouldn't have been so easy for me to just walk in, I don't think I probably would have transitioned, because I think the longer I would have thought about it and given it more time to think and given it more consideration, I think it may have played a part and may have influenced me transitioning at all. If it just wasn't so easy just to willy-nilly on impulse just go and decide to take hormones.
There is a currently popular catchphrase in politics, and I'm concerned that it's going to become a thought-terminating cliche, especially, but not only, on the left-wing end of the political spectrum. The catchphrase I hear again and again is, in reference to police reform, police misconduct, police violence, that we should only listen to the voices of African Americans. In reference to transgender people, that we should only listen to and believe the voices of trans men and trans women themselves. This is fundamentally incompatible, not just with the concept of deliberative democracy, it's also fundamentally incompatible with the concept of research itself. In Cambodia, many decades ago, there were violent, calamitous, disastrous events that today some people call the Cambodian genocide. Some people might call it the Cambodian Holocaust, or the Cambodian Civil War, or the Cambodian famine. You could say, a little bit more neutrally, the Cambodian Revolution. Do you think we should only trust and we should only listen to the voices of Cambodians about what happened and why? And that's an easy question, because we're talking about something that happened decades ago when I was a small child, basically, before many of you were born. What about the current political situation in Cambodia? Do you think we should only ask Cambodians? Do you think there's some unique value in the perspective of a detached outsider in evaluating what went wrong in Cambodia before, decades ago, and what's going wrong now? I would be the first person to admit there are some aspects of Cambodian culture and Cambodian politics and even Cambodian economics that only an insider can understand, that would be incomprehensible or even invisible to an outsider, to a detached observer, an analyst from a foreign culture like myself. But there are other aspects that are invisible to people within that culture and immediately seem very important to an outsider. Give a really quick example. You know, in the years leading up to the Cambodian Revolution, the level of violence that was normal in that culture was shocking and abhorrent, not just to Europeans who visited Cambodia, but like to Chinese people and Japanese people. Also, like people came from other parts of Asia to Cambodia. They still had the equivalent of gladiatorial games, of men fighting to the death for the entertainment of the crowd. Not exactly the same as in ancient Rome, but nevertheless with their own weapons, with their own tradition. Their levels of violence and executing and killing people for incredibly minor infractions, what was considered normal. Acts of cannibalism on the battlefield, cutting open your enemy and eating an organ from their body. Yes, on the one hand, Cambodia was a Buddhist culture committed to Theravada Buddhism, a religion of total nonviolence, a religion in which it's contrary to the religion even to kill a fly or to kill a mosquito. On the other hand, this was a shockingly, unbelievably violent culture, and someone who lived in that culture during those generations, they would regard those things as normal. Oh yeah, they go and watch the gladiatorial games, right? These things, when you grow up within a culture, that won't really stand out to you in quite that way. And in this same way, an outsider can look at how the ideas of Marxism and communism went from Germany to Russia, from Russia to China, from China to Cambodia. There's an analytical perspective of an outsider that really matters. And you know what the truth is? It doesn't invalidate the perspective of cultural insiders. It doesn't invalidate the perspective of Cambodians themselves. It enriches it, right? Both are necessary. But we've just talked about the easy part. We've just talked about research. The other side of this question is deliberative democracy. If you want to bring about police reform to the way the police operate in the United States, Canada, Australia, France, England, that is not a decision for black people to make alone. That is not a decision only for the victims of police brutality to make alone, which are obviously a tiny minority of the black community, and also there's a tiny minority of the white, Chinese, First Nations, American Indian. If you just gather together every person who had proven in court that they were the victim of police brutality or police harassment, I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands you get, but then you'd have a very small minority. And guess what? They shouldn't make the decision. They shouldn't write the legislation either. If you actually believe in research, I know it sounds ridiculous to say, but this is a real question. Do you think that research can reveal facts? Yes or no? Do you think that a researcher could discover something that a native-born Cambodian themselves might not know, might not appreciate? Do you think a researcher can discover something that a transgender person might not know or might not see the significance of? If you don't, if you think research just doesn't exist, if you think it's like the tooth fairy, that would be a very different view. On some level, to some extent, everyone in this audience believes in research. You just might not have thought through the implications, because a researcher is not qualified to do that research by being Cambodian. A researcher is not qualified to do that research because they're black. They're not qualified to do the research because they themselves are a victim of police brutality or police misconduct, right? You're qualified to be a researcher precisely by having the detached outsider's perspective, having the integrity, the commitment to the truth, and so on, that being a researcher entails. And again, I can sympathize, but obviously, if you are yourself personally the victim of police brutality, the police kicked in the door of your house and killed one of your children or killed your husband or wife, nobody expects you to have the detached perspective of a researcher, right? And nobody expects you to write the legislation, to come up with a new plan for what is the best decision, not just for the police and not just for the victims and not just for black people, but for all of us as a society, right? So there's a certain set of beliefs that include beliefs about research in terms of what deliberative democracy means, not just in its process, but in its outcomes. That we, all of us, in theory, if you really believe in democracy, it would be all of us. If you believe in aristocracy, it would just be some of us who get to have an opinion, but all of us get to put our salt, our seasoning in the pot and stir it up and try to come up with the best policy for all of us to live together in one and the same society under one and the same set of laws. If you really think it's inappropriate for a detached outsider to have a perspective on and to be advocating new laws and new policies on the hormone replacing therapy, the drugs given to transgender people, riddle me this. Do you think that only professional athletes should be allowed to vote on whether or not they get to use exogenous testosterone, steroids, or other performance-enhancing drugs? Do you think there's a decision to be made there that's not just what would be convenient for the athletes themselves? Athletes who want to win in their sport, they may want to look beautiful. Not all of them may be athletes. Some people may be using steroids because they want to be in pornography, they want to be models, they want to be actors, they want to be in the movies, right? Those people, they may make one decision, what's good for them, right? But you and I, right now, if you believe in deliberative democracy, if you believe in research, there's the possibility that we might know something, we might learn something through investigation where we have to make a decision as for what's best for all of us as a society moving forward.
I mean, really, people like to disrespect my crew, but the fact is that you know my name and I don't know you.